Hello once again, everybody. It's Andrew here from the Revisionist Almanac. I am back again with another round of my list of the 50 best movies of all time, which I submitted to the Cinema Legacy poll. Again, this is a collaboration orchestrated by Tom and Dana Duncan over at the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast. At this point, I've already run through movies number 50 through 31 in the first two parts. Go back and check those out if you haven't yet. We're going to pick things up here with the movie I decided was the 30th best ever made. That film is William Friedkin's 1973 horror nightmare, The Exorcist. Now I'm going to be covering the 1973 film year in the Almanac season finale next month, so I can't confirm or deny if there are any other 1973 movies that will show up in the final 29 places. But I have already included Enter the Dragon earlier in the countdown for what it's worth. I come personally from a very rural, small town, and I was raised in a Roman Catholic area, and I went to a religious private school all the way up until high school. So naturally, this movie scared me to pieces when I saw it way too young. As I've gotten older, though, I have come to appreciate The Exorcist even more for all the family drama at play through the various characters, and it's so easy for me to relate to the position Ellen Burstyn's character is in, with her daughter experiencing things that she can't help or fix. That is the truly horrifying stuff in this movie that is so relatable today where I'm at in my life. I also really have to give the Academy voters in the 1970s so much credit for recognizing a genre film like this with a Best Picture nomination. It was a landmark moment that the horror community doesn't seem to get rewarded with enough. Moving up to number 29, we have Charlie Chaplin's landmark 1940 film, The Great Dictator. In the battle between the two kings of this brand of silent film comedy, I have always personally preferred Charlie Chaplin's work over Buster Keaton. That is not a knock on Keaton, who I think is a pure genius in his own right. However, the work of Chaplin has always had a more important place in my life and what got me into loving film. This is the Charlie Chaplin movie that continues to rise most in my estimation, given the world we live in today, and the continued rise of fascist ideas both home and abroad that threaten to tear the fabric of our world apart. We get top-tier satire from Charlie Chaplin in the movie, his first real film endeavor in the world of sound after making a career in silent pictures. The Great Dictator is most known for its final scene, and the speech Chaplin gives at the end, which continues to resonate with me as I desperately try and cling to the last strands of my own sanity in the face of a world that's becoming harder to recognize. At number 28, for my money, the best piece of fantasy filmmaking we've ever seen, Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring from 2001. We are at this point still fresh on the heels of me covering the '01 film year for an Almanac episode, where I nominated this for a revised Best Picture, and it ultimately took down A Beautiful Mind thanks to your votes. I'm in no way a fantasy diehard, and I've never sat down to read the Tolkien books, but there's a magic to this trilogy, and especially this film, that I think extends far beyond the hardcore lovers of the source material. I said it on the '01 episode, but there was nothing in Peter Jackson's career leading up to this project that would lead anyone to believe he could pull off something of this size, this scope, and the sheer ambition. It's a flawless film on all technical levels, and it features a robust, expertly cast group of characters in every role, both big and small. At number 27, let's just call it, for the sake of hyperbole, the single best looking movie ever filmed. That's David Lean's magnum opus, Lawrence of Arabia from 1962. If you want to sit here right now and argue that Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon deserves that title over Lawrence, I will allow that, but any other argument feels like a waste of time. I in no way, shape, or form worship at the altar of David Lean, but his body of work is undeniable, and this is by a wide margin for me, his grand work. The film clocks in at over 200 minutes, and because of that, it's not the one I have the time to go back to regularly, but I always know when I do sit down to watch this, it's going to be an amazing, transformative experience. It's also one of the few movies I've owned in my life that I always try and upgrade to the highest possible format, so I can get the most of Freddie A. Young's work as cinematographer, from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, and now all the way up to 4K. This is an immaculate thing to look at, even if you don't get engulfed in the story like I do. And that's not even getting to the work of Peter O'Toole, the most important role he ever took playing the lead character in the real-life individual Thomas Edward Lawrence. If you love recent epic films like Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer as one of the newest examples, that movie and so many others owe a huge debt of gratitude to Lawrence of Arabia. At number 26, it was only a matter of time before this movie showed up on a list of best films. That's 1942's Casablanca by Michael Curtiz. Now, I know I'm probably positioning this a little lower than most of the people that contributed to this project and most movie fans in general. This is just one of those situations where I had to include a movie on this objective best list, even if it's not necessarily something that's a top tier favorite for myself. It's not that I have anything against Casablanca, and I genuinely love watching it whenever I go back to it, but it's also just not a movie that I go out of my way to carve out time for on a regular basis. It is, however, a certified classic for a reason, and it's unquestionably one of the best films ever made, so it had to at least make its way onto my list in a respectable place right here in the middle. At number 25, this might also be controversial for how low I have it, but let's just get this out of the way now. It's Francis Ford Coppola's Best Picture winning 1972 film, The Godfather. Rinse and repeat with what I just said about Casablanca a moment ago, in terms of it surely finding its way inside almost everyone else's top 10 lists, and I have no doubt it will be way up the final Cinema Legacy poll, because it's basically ranked near the top of any film list that's ever been created. I think The Godfather is a landmark piece of American cinema. Coppola adapted the book the film's based on, and he used his bullishness and his self-determination to break through any barriers and challenges put in front of him to get the film made, and this has become a seminal work. From Marlon Brando's iconic turn as Vito Corleone, to Robert Duvall's calm, cool, collected Tom Hagen, to the intensity of James Caan's Sonny, to Al Pacino's work as Michael Corleone, which is the character arc that defines the entire film trilogy. This is a movie that's massively quotable, and for most people, I think it's still the gold standard for films that deal with the inner workings of the mafia. At number 24, I have a film in my New York Times list of the 10 best movies of the 21st century. That is Alfonso Cuarón's dystopian masterpiece, Children of Men. There's no way around it. This is one of the most important films ever made, and it's also a technical mastercraft. I have already spent multiple hours at this point talking about this film, so if you want to hear me go in depth about why I love and revere Children of Men so much, either check out the episode of Cinemus I did on the film, or the 2006 Almanac episode I did earlier this year, both of which have links in the description. And it came as a great relief when I covered this movie earlier this season on an Almanac episode, that you all in the voting body online backed me having this take down The Departed for the revised Best Picture win of that film year. Thank you so much for helping me do that. At number 23 on my best films list, the best action movie ever made, you are here to bear witness to me picking George Miller's Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. Now, I have a very interesting journey with this movie over the last decade since it came out. At the time it was released, I was still working in restaurant management, and I didn't have the responsibility of kids, so I often found myself with evenings to myself to go to the theater as often as I wanted. I remember this movie coming out, and while I had seen and liked the previous 3 Mad Max movies, I didn't have much expectation for what this would be. So I went to see this by myself one night after work the weekend it opened, and from the first second the movie started, I knew I was in for an epic experience. The movie is an unrelenting experience that fills your adrenaline thanks to the sound design, the movie's frenetic pace, and the unparalleled spectacle of the action set pieces and stunt work. I was a believer right away, and I proceeded to go see it multiple times over the first week it was out, first taking my wife, then I took my brother, then I saw it in 3D, I took my friends from work, and so on. George Miller's world building is sensational. And what I love so much about this movie is how he subverts your expectation by thinking it's going to be a movie about Max, and instead it's really a story that focuses on Furiosa, one of the coolest female protagonists in recent film memory. There's also one of the coolest books on the behind-the-scenes chaos in the form of Kyle Buchanan's Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, which is a book I read back in 2022, and it only helped deepen my appreciation for the film and them actually pulling off this feat of greatness. And I also tackled the 2015 film year last season on the show. I picked this as my revised Best Picture over Spotlight, And thankfully, the online community and voters had my back, and this was one of my favorite history revisions to date. At number 22, just like Children of Men, this is a defining 21st century film. It is Jordan Peele's overwhelmingly genius debut, Get Out, from 2017. It is honestly one of the most impressive feature film debuts a director has ever written and made in the last 25 years. Though he was most known for his work on the hit Comedy Central series Key and Peele, little did we know back in 2017 that the man had such deep fascination and love for the horror genre. His influences and also his natural comedic ability allowed him to make something scary, funny, sharp, witty, and jam-packed with social commentary that makes the film so much fun to go back to over and over. It's filled with clues and Easter eggs planted throughout that keep me engaged long after the first watch and the big movie twist happens. Over the last 8 years, Peele has expanded in his style over his second and third films, Us and Nope, and he's now a Hollywood mogul at this point with his production work and helping other filmmakers get projects off the ground. However, for me, Get Out is still the stroke of genius that he should be most proud of. And at number 21, we finish off this section of my list with the first animated film featured on my top 50. That's 2008's WALL-E, directed by Andrew Stanton. Over 20 years after Pixar started making films, WALL-E signaled a moment where their films could feel like they were truly worthy of winning Best Picture at the Oscars. WALL-E starts as a silent film, a loving tribute to Hollywood history, and then it morphs into a beautiful romance storyline that runs alongside an intense indictment of humanity's continual destruction of our most precious asset, our planet, though it's told in a way that doesn't alienate kids or feel too preachy. Exquisite animation, and based on what we've seen from Pixar in the 17 years since, you could make a case that WALL-E was the absolute peak of the studio's work, and it's unfortunately been a slow, gradual decline in greatness ever since. So there we are with the next 10 movies on my own Cinema Legacy Poll Top 50. I will be back again on Monday, November 17th, with my next 10 movies. But don't forget, many of the other contributors of the Cinema Legacy Poll have their own mini episodes dropping this month and next month on the channel, so please keep your eye out for all those content releases to get their thoughts on what their best movies are. I'm Andrew, and I'll see you next time.